Spring break is supposed to be about sun, sand, and wild nights, but for me and my friends, it turned into a nightmare we'll never forget. On the second night, we found one that wasn't on any map, a flickering neon sign read Ocean View Inn. Even though the place was miles from the water, it looked old, with cracked walls and a front desk covered in dust, but we were exhausted and didn't care. The woman at the counter barely spoke. She slid us our keys without asking for payment, and when my friend Jake tried to make a joke, she just stared at him with sunken, glassy eyes. Something about her made my stomach turn. The room smelled damp, the wallpaper was peeling, and the only decoration was an old black and white photo of a beach with people in vintage swimsuits, but something was off, their faces were blurred. We should have left. At 3 a.m., I woke up to the sound of footsteps in the hallway, slow, deliberate, shuffling closer to our door. I held my breath, staring at the doorknob, waiting for it to turn, but instead, I heard something scratch against the wood, long, jagged nails dragging down the door. I grabbed my phone to text my friends, but there was no signal. That's when I noticed something even worse. The photo on the wall, it had changed. The beach was the same, but the blurred people were moving. I swear, one of them was looking straight at me now. I rushed to wake up Jake and our friend Sarah, but when I shook them, they wouldn't wake up. Their breathing was slow, too slow, like they were in some kind of trance. I tried calling 911, but my phone screen just filled with static. Then the whispers started, low, distorted voices, coming from inside the room. I ran out into the hallway. The motel was different now, darker, the walls covered in thick, black mold. Doors that had been there before were now gone, replaced by solid, rotting wood. I ran to the lobby, but the woman at the desk was gone. Only the keys remained, rusted and covered in dust, like no one had touched them in years. I screamed for help, but my voice just echoed into emptiness. Then, just as suddenly as it started, the motel changed back, the lights flickered, the hallway was normal again, and my friends finally woke up. I dragged them out without explaining. When we got to the car, we turned back for one last look. The motel was gone. Just an empty, abandoned lot, overgrown with weeds. We had rented a secluded beach house in Florida, far from the crowded party spots. It was an old, weathered house, with peeling paint and a strange, salty smell that never seemed to fade. The owner warned us about keeping the doors locked at night, not just for safety, but for something else. He hesitated before saying, "The locals talk about something that comes from the water." We laughed it off. On the third night, we were sitting by a bonfire when we heard it, a low, guttural sound, almost like a drowning person gasping for air. It came from the shoreline. At first, we thought it was a prank or some drunk tourist, but as we shone our flashlight toward the water, we saw something that made our blood run cold. A figure stood at the edge of the waves. It was tall and unnaturally thin, with seaweed clinging to its body. Its skin was bloated and pale, like it had been underwater for too long. The worst part? Its eyes, completely black, hollow, and staring right at us. We bolted inside, locking every door and window. The house had no curtains, so we could still see the beach from the living room. The thing didn't move at first. It just stood there, watching. Then, slowly, it started walking toward us. The night was a blur of panic, whispers, and the sound of something wet dragging itself across the deck. We didn't sleep. By sunrise, it was gone, but on the sand outside, there were footprints leading straight from the water to our door. The owner didn't seem surprised when we told him. He just sighed and said, "You should leave before nightfall." We packed and never looked back. I still don't know what we saw that night, but I haven't been to the beach since, and I never will. Spring break had finally arrived, and my friends and I were ready for a road trip. Our plan was simple: drive along the coast, party at different beaches, and crash wherever we could find a cheap motel. Spring break was supposed to be epic. My friends and I had planned a week of partying, and when we heard about a hidden island off the coast that only locals knew about, we had to go. They called it Isla Perdida, the Lost Island. Our resort had everything: pools, a private beach, and a 24-hour bar. But the strangest part? There was one pool, tucked behind the main hotel, that no one ever used. We found it on the second night. It was completely still, the water unnaturally clear, almost too perfect. No ripples, no chlorine smell, just silent. A sign next to it read, "Do not swim after dark." Jake, always the fearless one, laughed. "What's the worst that could happen? He jumped in. The second he hit the water, everything went dead silent. The music from the bar, the ocean waves gone, the air felt thick, like we were standing in a vacuum. Jake surfaced, looking confused. Guys, say something. We were screaming his name, but he couldn't hear us, his ears were bleeding. Then something pulled him under. His body jerked violently, his arms thrashing. It looked like something had wrapped around his leg, but we saw nothing. We dove in to help, but the moment we touched the water, we felt it too. Hands. Ice-cold fingers gripping our ankles, dragging us down. The water, so clear from above, turned into blackness below. I kicked hard and broke free, pulling Jake up with me. We scrambled out of the pool, choking on air. The second we hit the ground, the sound rushed back, music, wind, laughter, all at once. Jake's leg had bruises shaped like fingers. The resort staff found us minutes later, their faces pale. You swam in that pool? One whispered. They didn't say more, just gave us a different room, one far from that side of the resort. The next morning, the pool was gone. No water, no sign it had ever been there, just dry, cracked concrete where it had been the night before. We checked out early. And Jake? He hasn't gone swimming since. A guy at a bar agreed to take us there on his boat. He grinned as he lit a cigarette and said, "Not many come back." We laughed it off. Just some dumb ghost story, right? The island was beautiful, untouched, with white sand and thick jungle. No tourists, no buildings, just nature. We set up camp and partied on the beach. Then, around midnight, we heard it, a bell, faint but clear, coming from deep in the jungle. Who would put a bell out here? Sarah asked. No one had an answer. Jake, always the idiot, grabbed a flashlight. Let's check it out. We should have stopped him. We followed a narrow path inland, the trees twisting overhead, blocking the moonlight. The deeper we went, the colder it got. Then we saw it, an old wooden bell tower, covered in vines, rotting like it had been there for centuries. The bell swayed gently, but there was no wind. Then the whispers started. Not from one voice, but dozens, soft, overlapping, speaking in a language we didn't understand. My stomach turned as a horrible smell filled the air, rotting seaweed and something decayed. Then Jake screamed. He was standing in front of something half buried in the dirt, a skull, not an animal's, human. We ran, the whispers grew louder, turning into tortured wails. Branches snapped behind us, footsteps, something was chasing us. When we finally reached the beach, the boat was gone. The tide had risen fast, too fast. Our footprints from earlier were gone, like we had never arrived. But something else was there now, footprints leading out of the water. Not ours. Something had come ashore. A shadow moved by the tree line, just beyond the firelight. A figure, tall and thin, its eyes reflecting like a predator's. It wasn't alone. More shapes emerged, stepping onto the sand. We ran into the ocean, swam as hard as we could. I don't know how long we were in the water, but by the time another boat found us the next morning, we were half drowned, freezing, and delirious. When we told them we had been on Isla Perdida, the captain paled. That island doesn't exist, he said. But when I looked back, I swear, just for a second, I saw the bell tower. And it was ringing. Spring break, Cancun, unlimited drinks. It was supposed to be the best week of our lives. We booked our spring break trip at a cheap hotel near South Padre Island. It wasn't the nicest place, peeling wallpaper, flickering lights, but it was cheap, and that's all that mattered. The plan was simple, drive all night to reach the beach by sunrise, but sometime around 2 a.m., we saw her. A girl, standing by the side of the road, barefoot, wearing a white sundress that looked wrong, like it belonged to another time. Her long black hair hid her face. Jake slowed the car. "Dude, don't," I said. But before I could stop him, she lifted her hand, not waving, just pointing at us. Jake pulled over. She didn't move, didn't walk toward us, she just stood there. "Need a ride?" Jake called out. No answer, just silence. Then Sarah gasped, "Where are her feet?" We looked closer. She was hovering, just slightly, an inch or two off the ground. Jake slammed the gas pedal. We sped off, hearts pounding. No one spoke. 15 minutes later, we pulled into a gas station. I jumped out. trying to shake off the feeling that we had barely escaped something wrong. Then I froze. Standing near the entrance, under the flickering neon light, was her. Same dress, same hair, same empty stare. She hadn't walked there. She had just appeared. That was it. We got back in the car and never stopped again until we reached the coast. But when we unloaded our bags the next morning, we found something in the back seat. A single dirty footprint. From bare feet. And a faint whisper in the wind. "Thanks for the ride." The guy at the front desk handed us our keys, but when he saw our room number, his face changed. "Room 306? He muttered, then shook his head. "That can't be right." He quickly switched it to 308 and told us to ignore 306. That room's not supposed to be booked. That night, we were drinking on the balcony when we noticed something weird. The other rooms had lights on, curtains open, but 306 was pitch black. The curtains didn't move, even when the wind blew. At around 2 a.m., Sarah swore she heard knocking, faint, rhythmic, coming from inside 306. Jake, always the dumb one, dared me to check it out. I wish I hadn't. The door to 306 was unlocked. I pushed it open just enough to peek inside, and my stomach dropped. There was furniture, but it was all covered in white sheets, thick with dust. The bed looked like it hadn't been touched in years, and in the center of the room stood an old wooden chair, facing the door. Then, suddenly, bang, the bathroom door inside 306 slammed shut. I ran. We told the front desk, but the guy just shook his head. "I told you not to go near it." We demanded answers. He sighed, lowered his voice, and said, "No one's supposed to be in that room. It's been empty since 2003. "Why?" I asked. He hesitated, then whispered, "Because the last guest never checked out." We left first thing in the morning. As we passed room 306, I swear I saw the curtain move. Something inside was watching. Spring break, road trip, miles of empty highway stretching through the Arizona desert. Just me, my 3 best friends, and a trunk full of snacks. Spring break in Miami, 5-star hotel, rooftop pool. Everything was perfect until the night we took the wrong elevator. Spring break in New Orleans was wild, but after a few too many drinks, someone suggested we check out an abandoned plantation house just outside the city. Locals warned us not to go. "That house don't let people leave," one old man muttered. We laughed it off. At midnight, we found it, hidden behind overgrown trees, its windows dark, its front door slightly open like it was expecting us. "Just a quick look," Jake said. Famous last words. The inside smelled like mold and something rotten. The air was thick, heavy, like the house was breathing. Then we heard the footsteps. Not ours. They came from upstairs, slow, dragging. "Hello?" Sarah called out. Silence. Then a whisper too close to my ear. "Get out." We bolted for the door, but it was gone. The hallway stretched longer than before. The walls seemed to pulse, shifting, closing in. Then Jake screamed. We turned and saw him frozen, staring at something in the dark corner of the room. A figure. Tall, thin, with empty eyes. It grinned, head tilting, watching us like it was amused. Then, in a voice that sounded like all of us speaking at once, it whispered, "You shouldn't have come." The next thing I remember, we were outside. No memory of how, just standing in the overgrown yard, gasping for breath. The house was dark again, silent. We ran to the car, but before we drove off, I glanced back one last time. And in the upstairs window, something was still watching. It was perfect, until we heard the voices. It started as a whisper in the wind, faint, almost playful. Then it said my name, clear as day. At first, I thought it was one of my friends messing with me, but when I turned, they were all by the bonfire, no one near the water. "Did you hear that?" I asked. Jake shook his head. "Hear what?" Then Sarah's face went pale. "It just said my name," she whispered. The whispers turned into laughter, light, mocking, but the beach was empty. Then Jake cursed and backed away. "Dude, the footprints." We looked down. Footprints in the wet sand, leading from the water to us. Not ours. We hadn't moved. Then the tide rolled in, and the prints disappeared all at once. The laughter stopped. Everything was too quiet. No waves, no wind. Then, from the dark water, we saw something rise. A shape, human, but wrong. The eyes were too wide, the grin too sharp. It knew us. And then, in our voices, it spoke. Come closer. We ran. When we reached the resort, the music was blasting. People were laughing like nothing had happened. But when we turned back, the beach was empty. No footprints, no sign of anything. But the next morning, we found something in the sand. Our names. Carved deep. Too deep. Like something had dragged a claw through the shore. We left that day. And now, sometimes, when I'm near the ocean, I swear, I still hear it calling. It was around 3 a.m. My friends and I had just left a party on the 10th floor. We were tipsy, laughing, pressing the lobby button over and over, waiting for the damn thing to move. But instead of going down, the elevator went up. That's weird, Sarah muttered. The display flashed, 11. 12. 13. Then it kept going. 14. 15. 16. We looked at each other, confused. The hotel only had 15 floors. Then, suddenly, ding. The doors slid open. Pitch black. No lights, no hallway, just an endless, empty space. The air felt thick, like it was pressing against us. Close the doors, now, Jake whispered. I hit the button a dozen times, the doors wouldn't close. Then we heard it. Shuffling footsteps. Coming from the darkness. Getting closer. Sarah whimpered, there's someone out there. No. Not someone. Something. A shape moved just beyond the doors, too tall, too thin, its limbs twitching as if it wasn't used to moving, and its face, it didn't have one. Then it stepped forward. That's when the doors slammed shut. The elevator plunged down so fast my stomach flipped. We were screaming, bracing for the crash. Then ding. The doors opened to the lobby. Everything was normal. The front desk, the music, people chatting. It was like nothing had happened. We ran out of there, shaking, breathless. The night manager saw our faces inside. You took the wrong elevator, he said. What the hell does that mean? I demanded. He just shook his head. That floor doesn't exist. We checked out the next morning. But before we left, I looked at the elevator panel one last time. There was no button for the 16th floor. Spring break in Mexico, a private beach, no crowds, no noise, just waves, stars, and the distant sound of music from the resort. We weren't supposed to be there.